when the reminder comes in from colleagues that it's my turn to do the bulletin reflection for the Sunday service sheet and the website, I have to admit that it can provoke a muffled expletive, one more thing to add to the to-do list before close of play on Thursday. But looking for inspiration to this Sunday's gospel reading, I was brought up short once more by the condensed and powerful gospel in miniature presented by verses 13 to 17, chapter 3 of St. John's Gospel. Please do look it up as soon as you've read this, or have your ears sharpened and ready for it on Sunday. The verses begin with a strange little story from the book of Numbers. Wandering around in the wilderness, the Israelites, not for the first time, grumble against God and Moses and are rewarded by a plague of poisonous snakes. As a remedy, God tells Moses to fashion a bronze snake and lift it high on a pole so that everyone who's been bitten may look on the bronze image and live. Of course, in time, the serpent on the pole became the universal symbol for the medical profession. But before that, it was identified in the early church as a paradigm of the cross, the instrument of suffering and death, which became the symbol of our salvation. Two things about the passage move and fascinate me. First, the mystery depicted in the story of the bronze serpent and the image of the cross, that the thing that causes pain, suffering, an instrument of torture, becomes the image that brings healing, new life, salvation. It makes me want to ask about the images of suffering, death, and pain we see, hear, read about. In what way, if any, can they be part of healing, transformation, new life? On the one hand, to think of footage from the earthquake in Turkey and Syria, stories of the evils visited upon Ukraine as somehow material for healing and salvation feels, well, obscene. But it also feels similarly obscene to consume these images and then move on, unaffected, unchanged. Second, a few verses later, in the passage, the gospel in miniature is described. For God so loved the world. It doesn't, I think, just mean God loved the world so much, but also for God thus loved the world. For God loved the world in this way, like this, that he sent his only Son. Jesus links the story of the bronze serpent lifted up on a pole to what is to happen to him, that he too will be lifted up on the cross. And that is a sign in which an instrument of agonizing death becomes a sign of healing love, of salvation, of new life. So when I gaze at images of suffering on screen or page, or hear them on the radio, like the Israelites gazing on the bronze serpent, like countless people who've gazed on the cross in extremes of suffering throughout the ages, I may not look away. We may not look away. We may not consume, note, shake our heads and move on. The steadfastness of our gaze is meant to do something with us, like gazing on the cross. It's meant to unlock our prayer, tap into our compassion, release our generosity, make us do something in response to what we've seen on screen or page. Compassion fatigue will always lurk beneath, but the words recall us. If God so loved the world, if God loved the world in this particular way, what same response might God long for from us?